Okay, we're going to dive into some of the coding on this program, but I did want to show you that I did go ahead and add, you know, a text box for the file name, so I can grab it and paste it into Explorer if I want to go to the directory quickly. But and these two boxes here, by the way, they're default gray, because they're read. I got them set to read only. This right here is a label. It's not a text box. I just got it, set to look like a label. Set it to look like a text box, but these are actual text boxes. That's why you can, select from them. But anyway, this way I can, grab this and, plop it into an Explorer window, if I wanted to. I'll get there pronto. So, but anyway, but the fact of the matter is, I'm going to get into the code. So first, let me kind of describe the controls here. Like I said, this is a label, and most of these things, okay, I do have, like some of these actually do have some events assigned to them, but that's mostly just for selection modes and so forth. So I can double click and have it select everything in some of these boxes as opposed to the default behavior of the box. And then if you tab into it, it'll auto select everything in the box, or it's supposed to. I don't know how well that actually works, but the fact of the matter is that I haven't really tested it, but I think I did it right. And of course, this is a simple button, and again, on some of these I do have properties. Like here I did set the color to lavender as opposed to the default, so at least looks different. It doesn't look grayed out. Grayed out tells me it's disabled. Well, that's not what it is. Or it looks like this one here. This was unnecessary. It was just part of my early program development. I just left it in for the hell of it. But there's you can see that there's not really. I didn't screw around a lot with the properties, and most of these are default. I do have some events assigned to these. You can see that we got an event there. That's kind of a default event, though, I think. On this one, I do have a double-click event as well, and you'll see what that does. But the rest of these are pretty conventional. Outside of the normal event you would get, I do have an enter and a leave event on assigned to this text box here. But you can see that the properties are pretty conventional, and here I changed some of the colors and fonts around a little bit. So just changed the size of it, made it bold, that kind of thing, or well, bold here. On here I did change the size of the font, but that's it. I didn't, still a default font. No, what the fuck? See, size 12. On this label here, that's a label. I've got size 12 too, and bold, and that's just a regular label that I don't do anything with. But again, most of these, there's nothing different about it. Again, this is the only one that's a little different because it's a label, but I got it to a fixed 3D border, and it's not, auto size is set to false, that kind of thing. Now this is a box that, it's kind of floating here, and that's our edit box. And originally I was trying to, and you'll see this, I was trying to position it where the mouse cursor was, but I decided, well, that might be a little freaky for one thing, and I was going to have to really look up how to get the proper coordinates off the form. So I just decided to screw it. It'd be better just to have it fixed. But it's by default set to invisible. So and let's see, we got our label at the bottom of the form here. It's just a standard label. That's the default text for it. The regular button, so again, know, if you wanted to recreate this for yourself, that's why I'm just trying to show you these things. So, this I got, you know, 1, and there's a default seed number, you know, because you can change the number too, you know, instead of it starting, you know, when you're doing an auto number, instead of it starting on 1, you know, it could start on like 50 or something like that if you put the seed number in there. Now, yeah, but anyway, the fact of the matter is, I mean, I forgot, I was going to say something, I forgot what it was. But anyway, that's pretty conventional. Now these, if you're curious, that's a list view control, so it's different than these. These are just list boxes. So, and I don't know if I had any properties specially set, but you can kind of look at it there and look at it here. I don't think there was anything special I did about that with those. You know, this, you know, you can go in and, you know, it's kind of cool, you know, but, you know, there's an image list control associated with it, and the instructions were on Microsoft. I forgot how I found it, but, you know, but you can, you know, edit groups or what the fuck ever. I don't, because like I said, I didn't do any research on this. I just wanted to make a goddamn file rename routine. I didn't want to go into rocket science with this, because I mean, I have a because I need to rename those files so I can get them uploaded to YouTube. So that was my sheer interest. And I was like, well, you know, I could use some C# experience, so I'll make a program while I'm at it. So I thought it'd be a good test, because, you know, this stuff generally is kind of a pain in the ass. Even in Visual Basic, it was kind of a VB6. It was kind of tricky doing file manipulation like this. You know, much more familiar with graphics and doing things like that, you know, is what I'm more interested in. So to me, this kind of thing's a little trickier, especially in .NET. You know, it's really, really tricky nowadays. Doing things like this, it is. At any rate, you know, this is, you know, pretty much what, you know, what the Microsoft part of it that we don't really use does, but I'll show you the code to it. We'll start at the top. That's where, you know, that code is, so you can see, you know, what's going on here. But like I said, I don't really understand how the program works, but I know that you know, the constructor, you know, they run this, you know, this is their code, you know, they run this populate tree view function, you know, which, you know, this is some of the stuff I tried adding in to get it to work for my application, but, you know, the rest of this is their code. So, you know, basically runs this, okay, which also calls this get directories function, which is a recursive function that goes in and populates the tree view box. And again, I'd have to go modify this somehow, because it's doing a for each or what the fuck ever. I mean, I don't know, you know, it just seems like I could fucking get this goddamn thing to work with a for, you know, with a you know, try catch block, and maybe I could. I was thinking I couldn't, because I tried a different version of this in a different program, so that I found off of a different website, wasn't from Microsoft. But this might work a little differently, so it might actually work with a try catch block. That other one didn't, and it involved a recursive routine and a non-recursive routine, so there was 2 different routines for it. Let's see, where would a try catch for each? Okay, so this is going to cycle through subdirectories. So maybe I can put a try catch just in this whole fucking thing. Because again, I don't know what the fuck they're doing. These controls are so complex that, like I said, I didn't want to spend like a week on it trying to figure this shit out. So I just have a task I wanted to complete. You know, and I've got to break off C and start getting C# and start getting onto Java soon. So I'm just surveying these languages right now. It's the best I can do, because I don't have a lot of time to investigate these things. So let's try a try block. Okay. try block in here, and then catch this. Oh, shit. Alright, so I could try that, and let me set the base directory to just see. Instead of C job. See, on the other program, that's what it would do. I mean, it would just get stuck in an infinite loop. I mean, it just wouldn't complete, but you would think with a for each statement that it would eventually run out of errors. It looks like it's kind of the same boat, though. So, I can't do it that way. I don't know if I could be more specific because I'm not exactly sure where the error is coming from, because this is a recursive routine. So I'll tell you what, let me stop it because it's obviously not going to do shit. And let me remove this try catch block, and I'll show you what it does, and we'll find out where the error is and see if I can put a try catch block there specifically. I gotta go just delete this. I think that's wrong. It should be it. I don't know. You can see it a / there, but let me try it this way. Okay, so it's telling me access to path is denied. Fuck your path. Okay, so that's where it's doing it. See, I don't know if that's the only place it does it, because I don't know what this is really doing. Okay, subdirs, wherever they define that. I don't know if that's I don't know what that is. So let's try to add in a try catch block here specifically. Having a problem now. Oh. Okay. Alright, let me undo some of this then. Alright, so I'll go put it, because we don't want it adding a node. Well, I'll try it here. No, that's fine. See, that's what I'm saying, that's why it's frustrating. I mean, like I said, I don't want to have to go figure out what the fuck these idiots were trying to do. I mean, this is from Microsoft, and I don't know why they don't have just a fucking control that does this shit automatically. I don't know why I had to, jump through such hoops to do a fucking simple, because they have dialog boxes. They should have controls that are fucking file related, and it almost seems like VB6 had things like that, but I don't think it did. It almost seems like it did, though. But I don't know. It's been so many years since I've screwed around with things like that. It's been 15, 20 years since I've looked at aspects like that in Visual Basic 6. But I don't know. It's just kind of frustrating. It obviously doesn't work. So. that works. Okay, so anyway, that's why I don't use this, because it's just too, you know, again, why the fuck, you know, you can't get around those exceptions? I don't know. You know, I would think, you know, going through a for each statement, it wouldn't be a problem if it missed one, but apparently it does. You know, but it seems like we'd have to have that try block around this add node, you know, because we don't want to add a blank node, right? But that seemed to have a problem too, because that's how I did it to begin with. But I guess that's part of the problem. I mean, because, you know, it's going to come out of there and try to add a node. Because, see, I don't think it's going to generate an error trying to add a node. It's just generating an error trying to access it. But, you know, it'll still try to add a node for that given thing. So, but let's try that just one last time. It's kind of a waste of time. You can skip forward in the video if you don't like this. I probably wouldn't if I were you. Yep, no, that shit, you know, sure don't work. Okay, fuck it. That's enough. What son of a bitch. Okay, let's make sure it still works. Okay, good. I'm going to go ahead and compile this for release, by the way, while I'm at it. Okay. Alright, so that's a release version. Now let me see if I can, and this might be educational for you, that's why if you're new to this. Let me open up the directory. Okay, it should be in properties, let's see, debug. Oh wait, it might be in release. Okay, here's our exe file. Now the question is, you know, can I go okay, I don't know where that put it, but desktop, create shortcut. Where did it create the shortcut? Oh, here it is. Okay, so that's the executable version. I threw it on my desktop. I'd rather throw it into a folder. But, you know, it's such a small application, you know, it's kind of standalone. It doesn't rely on any other resources or anything, if I recall. Let's see if it works. I don't know if there's going to be anything in there. I'll just go back to the Magics folder. Yeah. Okay, groovy. So, seems to work. So, let me just copy this out before I close this directory. Well, I'll put it there. I'll just put it out here. Now, like I said, you know, because of that stupid Microsoft thing, you know, I really need to strip this out, because I couldn't actually run this program on a computer that didn't have a C jobs directory in it, because that probably generated a fatal exception. I mean, I could go put some kind of an error handler in there for that somewhere. I don't know, I wonder if I could put something like this in a try block. That probably wouldn't return an exception. Because I wonder if I could just put a try block here, and so if it generates any kind of error in this routine, you know, it would come back to that try block. But I don't know if it would do that or not. I don't know. I don't know if you can do that or not. running in release. So so I could use that version if I move to another computer. But again, I'd probably shorten it up since most of that's sort of useless. I mean, anyway, I mean, it's kind of a way of back checking your work if you wanted to, because you can still functionally, as long as you're working in this directory anyway, you can functionally, go check out the progress. But like I said, most of the stuff I'm going to do isn't even in this directory, so it's really silly to have it in there. But I still thought it was good code that I may in the future want to go modify. But anyway, you can see how this kind of thing sort of works. And let's see. Yeah, but it's just it's kind of elaborate and it's really complex. So I just I didn't have time to want to mess with it, or the desire to want to mess with it. So Microsoft, ignore. And now for the rest of the program. So the rest of the program, is below this. Okay, so anyway, let's take a look at what I'm doing here. I'm just going to scroll through the program right now, just so you can kind of view all the code. Kind of figured I was going to scroll through this while the program was running, so bigger screen. Okay. For the rest of the program, so like I said, I'll scroll down through this in case you're just interested in typing this in yourself for some reason. I mean, I could put this out on GitHub or something, and maybe I will if enough people leave comments. Maybe I'll just put the finished program out there, but it still needs refinement. So, but anyway, it's not a very big program, as you can see here. So it's, and then this little thing here is nothing. It's just some notes that I had. This is actually part of the original program that I started with. I told you I found a little 12-line program or so. Well, this is I think this is a complete thing. I put it in a try-catch block, by the way, but pretty much a lot of this is the original code and some of this is the original code. So again, it was specific to PDF files and crap like that, so which isn't what I wanted. Let's see. Okay, that's the start of it. Went too far here. Okay, but yeah, let's see. I guess I can go ahead and stop the program now. Okay, go hide this for now. Okay, so we got a if I had enough room, I tend to work in these programs with this torn off. So, because like I said, I like to have the window up at all times. I mean, it's just a habit I developed in Visual Basic, but it's just so nice to be able to go, okay, what was this control called again? And because I normally have it up here, so I mean I can go, see what the name of it is, and stuff like that real easily, and make edits real easily, etc. That's why I don't like going back and forth. That's bullshit. But anyway, I don't have my screen set big enough to accommodate that right now. But okay, shit. Okay, fuck it. I'm gonna make this stand out a little more so I don't get lost as much here. This is ridiculous. I hate how you have to do this. If you put 3 slashes, it goes into fucking XML edit mode. So, put 3 or more slashes in a row, it does. So that's annoying. Okay, so this is the form load event. This is what I use. I don't use the constructor at all. I just, so I got file extension, equals that. Okay, and I just created these member variables here. These aren't globals, they're members, they're in a class, so they're really technically private by default, I believe. At least to the class they are. But working with a lot of these Microsoft controls, sometimes that's the only convenient or reasonable solution, and that had to be done here. Again, didn't want to spend a week on it. Now you notice I don't have a lot of comments in my code, and that's bad practice. You really should comment your code more. That's one of the things that sucks about a lot of the code you see out on the internet, is they don't fucking put comments in it. So you really don't know what the fuck they're doing with some of this stuff. But since I'm making a video about it, that's why I kind of don't bother. So it's good, because it's even easier for me, because I've actually tried going and deciphering my notes out of programs in the past, and that I hadn't touched in years or whatever, and it's actually kind of hard to decipher. It's better to actually have a video on it, even if it's as long as this damn thing's going to be. This video is going to be. But at any rate, I got a variable here I'm using, for file extension, and here's our selected path. So that holds our file extension, and this is our, our path, and I set it to a default path with C#, or not C#, but C, just to make sure that there's something in there. And then I had to use this variable later on, because these fucking list boxes annoyingly resetting themselves to -1, for some fucking reason. And again, I didn't have time to research it to see why the fuck that happens, but the selected index tends to reset itself to -1, so it can be really hard finding after the fact. Like when I was doing my edit box, that little edit box right here, well, by the time I get there, well, this fucking list box here has reset its index to -1 for some goddamn reason. So the fact of the matter is, I had to make a variable, to try to hold a value, so I kind of know where to position the edit back in the list box when you're done with it, and you'll see that in a minute. Let's see, we got a button 1 click. Now, what the fuck is button 1? That's this you're asking. So that's our open directory. Anyway, but it does. It opens a folder dialog browser box. So, and then gets the selected path when you've, selected a path out of it. Weird. Oh, okay, yeah, I'm initializing it to our selected path at first, so it starts in the C drive, because without this, it actually starts, off in Never Neverland. That's what I fucking hate about Windows 10. If you look at all this shit, this is what it starts, this starts at, it doesn't start like in your disk like it used to on Windows 7, or it starts here, and I'm like, where the fuck, I'm constantly hunting for where the fuck is my hard drive. That's what I want to get to, and they make you fucking jump through a lot of hoops. I have to go through this and then this, anyway, I just, I have it so because it was doing that in that folder box, and I was like, that's fucking bullshit. So anyway, that's why I set this to, C and initialize the path to it, so at least it starts you out in the right general area, more or less, instead of having to click through several other, other things, to get to where you want to be. Okay, and let's see, the selected path, So this is setting our variable to whatever the results, okay, of the folder dialog box were. So, and then it's running this populate list box function, which you'll see a few different places in here. But then we're also setting our textbox3.text equals selected path, which is this thing that I added. So that's just setting it, every time you change directories, it'll, establish that to a read-only text box. So, but since it's read-only, we can't change it, accidentally, as the case may be, because there's no reason to change it, but we can grab it at least and copy and paste it. Okay, and this is just some shit I was trying, at various points, like this IEnumerables, trying to figure out how some of this shit worked. And it was working code, but not doing what I wanted it to do. Because I still don't understand that whole IEnumerables thing and all that stuff. Again, I'm going to have to wait till I get some books on C#. But I got to get a fucking job before I can afford to get those. So, and that's what this is all about. Every video you see on any of my channels right now is about that, training for that purpose, trying to sharpen my skills so I can, get some kind of decent job. Okay, listbox. Okay, this is a populate listbox function. So listbox1.items.clear. In case you're wondering too, by the way, in Visual Basic 6, I've written some very sophisticated programs, mostly graphics editors and things like that. So, to control graphical signs and things like that. I mean, very sophisticated programs. They're like 30,000 lines long. So, I mean, I've written some pretty big programs and a lot of database stuff and everything else. But again, that's VB6. So, most of that database stuff I hadn't touched in 15 years or more. Although I still was programming VB6 up to 2014, but at any rate, doing the graphics editor I was, but not file management and shit like that. It's been a while since I touched that, even a VB6. But VB6 was a lot simpler without all this .NET shit. Believe me, a lot of people still program in VB6 because of that. It's just a lot less complicated, but still, kind of deprecated at this point. But, okay, so we're going to populate, so this populates or clears our list boxes. Button commit.enable equals false, so, I wanted to, make sure that you couldn't commit to, having it, because you don't want it to go through and, because if you push this commit button, it would go through. If you had a file list here, it'd go through and try to rename them as something blank. So it probably would generate an exception and not do anything, because I got everything try catch box. But the thing is, it's just another safeguard, so I got that button disabled, and in fact it's disabled by default. So, so that's just a safeguard. There's plenty of little safeguards, even though, like I said, I don't know that I have this thing 100% bulletproof, but it's fairly bulletproof. So, because I don't want to take a chance on renaming all my files, because it could do something funky, and then you have the big mess on your hands. So I'm going to try to make this as safe as possible, but I can't guarantee it's bulletproof. So I already pointed out a few of the little bugs in it, but that's why I have a preview mode. So anyway, okay, text file.text. Okay, so it's checking to make sure that it's not empty. And I know there's another way to do this, but I just kept forgetting what it is. The is blank or null or whatever. But I was trying that earlier, but I just couldn't get it to work. And I know I got it to work before in some other videos, but I just can't remember how I did it. So, and I like to try to test myself by, when I learn programming, by not trying to refer any more necessary to my old notes. And plus, it's just, I don't know, kind of a pain in the ass to have to bring up a bunch of programs all the time in this. You end up like 4 or 5 of these Visual Studios running, trying to go back and forth like that and hunt things down. It's just better to try to test yourself this way. So, but at any rate, okay, I got a file extension, which is built, with whatever's in that file extension text box right here, and just automatically appends that file. And I was thinking, that in the future I may want to actually have it not work this way, just have it take the whole extension and put it in that box. But again, I didn't want to have to screw with that. Because you can do more complicated search strings. You can put like C star dot star or whatever, or star dot WMV or PDF or whatever, and have it, return all files that start with C, for example, and that are PDFs. So it's more powerful than that. That in the future that might be something to do differently, but for my purposes, this is all I want to do, since I'm just trying to rename a bunch of files, really. And but still, I was thinking in hindsight that would have been a good thing to do. String file list equals directory, get file system entries. So this is making a file list, and again, this is really something I was copying from some other code. This is one of the few snippets that remained off that original code I showed you earlier. So then I'm just using a for next loop to go through the file list, doing a try catch block. So list box dot add. So this basically populates our first list box. As you can see here, putting it into a string, and let's see. So this basically is a string array, and this basically, gets the file. This could be where I have my problem, why it's listing the directories. I don't know, because they actually used a different version of it, and I was trying to use several different versions, trying to see if I could find a version that just returned the file name, but I couldn't find one. So, but this will return the entire path of everything, I guess, including directories. Because there was a get file name, I think, was what they used. But that seemed to return, because I think it'll work. I'll try to, let me try to do that modification real quick. See, comment that out. Instead of doing it this way, I'll do it get files. Okay, so this returns the names of files, including the paths. Because again, the original program used that, and I think it'll work the same. So let me see if that works real quick. That still bugs me, it does that. Because again, I did clean up the code a little bit, and maybe that's what kind of messed it up. As I removed a lot of my garbage out of it, and maybe that's what screwed everything up. I don't know. So, okay, yeah, this isn't listing the folders. So, this is just listing the files. So this is what I want. So, originally I must have had code in there that did that too, and it just overwrote what this code did. So that's probably what happened. Because I end up with a lot of commented out strings when I'm trying different experiments, and I probably just had a string that was like this that wasn't commented out, and then one that did the same thing. I just didn't notice that it usurped this. So that's probably what happened. I'll just leave it like this. That's better. I'm still in release mode too, by the way. Switch back into debug mode. It's good practice. But that's the version I want, though. I don't want returning file name or folder names. But anyway, that just retrieves a list in a string array of paths, with file names, and makes me still wonder every time I make a change in that, does that really work for sure? Let's try it again. Okay, SolidWorks, so video 2. Okay, and that has a subdirectory in it, the do not publish directory. Okay, yeah, I don't see that listed here, so choose one of them, and let's do what we did with the other one. Copy and paste this here, call it SolidWorks. Do a preview. Alright, and now I can go grab the path and put it into our box here. So we get there. Alright, so there's the results. Let's go ahead and commit to it. Alright, and you can see it made the changes. So yeah, it still works even with that change. Slick modivity. Okay, so that's all I wanted that to do. So groovy. So yeah, that works just fine, and it won't bring back the folder names. So, but at any rate, then we go, like I said, for a for loop, that goes through everything in the file list, file list.length, because it is an array, and you get the length property. So we're going through all those files. Okay, and for every one of them, we're going to try, our string, creating a temp string here, and going, file list I dot remove selected path dot length, +1. Okay, so I'm basically, taking our selected path, that we created much earlier, right up here, because it's a string, and I'm basically removing it from the information this returns, so that we can strip the file path off of it, because since they don't have a fucking function that just returns the damn names, which would have been nice, but that's how I strip the path off of it, so we can add it to our list box 1, which is the left-hand list box. So, so we're just adding this temporary variable. It's had the path stripped off of it, but otherwise it retains the extensions and everything. And here, notice that, we're actually filtering for a file extension when we build this entity. So, we're using the selected path as where to get the files from, but then the, file extension is our search parameter. So, which you could enter a search parameter directly in quotes like this if you wanted to. So, on this up here, tests our file extension.txt to make sure it's not equal to nothing. As long as it isn't, it's basically concatenating information from our file extension text box with this star dot. But if it's empty, it'll do star dot star. So so that's just a safety check to make sure that, because if I went in and just like deleted the information in it, well, this is a safeguard to make sure that it does have a valid search string in it. So, and it always does this every time you run this populate list boxes subroutine. So, but so that pretty much compiles that list, and this just strips it off. So that's pretty, pretty straightforward. And I have an empty catch statement there. So, again, I really don't care for those pop-up boxes unless there's a good reason for a message box to tell you about an error. So, I'll just let it fall through and unhandle. If there is an exception, it's just an unhandled exception. It's no big deal. So anyway, we have this, you know, text file extension. You know, it's our file extension text box. So we have an inner focus event, and you know, but I, okay, say, okay, so text box select all. So this is actually a universal statement that actually uses a lot of different boxes, not just the extension box. So, you know, like I said, you can see that, like I said, on its box, you know, I use it for the enter and leave focus events, but I also use it for, you know, several of these other text boxes too. You know, like an enter and a double click event sometimes, etc. So a lot of different text boxes actually use this very same routine, just to select all. That's why I have it generalized here. So, you know, whatever object, you know, is coming in, okay, it's filtering it out to make sure it's a, you know, filtering out any object that's coming in. So if it's a text box, okay, it's going to operate on that entity. If it's like a, you know, a freaking button or something, and it'll just ignore it. You know, so if you accidentally had a button assigned the same event, it wouldn't be a problem. Which I don't, but you know, so, but that's just good practice. Okay, text file extension. I also have this leave event, okay, for text file extension. Now this is different. You know, so leave focus for this. Let's see, it's got a different event tied to it. So, and it runs this populate list boxes. So in other words, if you manually change something in this text box, like to a different extension, you can type one in if you want, and then once you leave that box, like click on another box or whatever, it'll automatically repopulate this list box with that new file extension. So that's what that does. Selected index changed. List box 1. So this is the default event. If you double click on a, in design mode, if you just double click on an event, it'll take you here. So, but it's selected index changed event. So ostensibly that's whenever the actual index, selected index changes. So it's going label full file name, you know, which is this label here, you know, equals, you know, dot text equals listbox dot items listbox1 dot selected index dot to string. So, you know, I'm basically, you know, getting whatever you select and putting it out to that that label there. So that's why it ends up with that file name in it, you know, with the extension and everything. And I'm going string, temp string. This is an array. I'm going to label full name dot text dot split dot. Okay, so this is how I, you know, run a split function, but it makes an array of strings, and that's why this takes an array of strings. You can't just, you know, use just a regular string, because this returns a type of string array. So as you can see, damn it, right there is a string array. So then I'm going textbox2.text equals temp string 0. Now since it's an array, there's a 0 value for the split to the left of the period, and in this case, and then a 1 value, that's the text to the right. Now the 1 value is the extension. The 0 value is the file name in this case, you know, because there's only one period in there. Now if there's more than one, you'd probably have a bigger array if there's more than one period. But then when textbox2.text equals temp string 0, so, you know, I'm getting the file name, and that's where I'm putting it into our second text box here. So let's see, so basically, you know, that's putting our file name in there. Then I'm going, if checkbox, you know, CB, you know, checkbox auto extension dot checked, Now auto extension is this box here. So in other words, if it is checked, then it simply, it'll set the text file extension.text equal to temp string 1, which, remember, I said the 1 is the right hand side. So if this is checked, it'll also go ahead and, so it'll automatically add the extension to that extension text box. And then it runs the populate list boxes item again, if that is indeed handled. And it may actually be doing this more than once, I'm not sure, because that's the thing, when you get into event-based programming, if I but since we're not changing the value of the extension, now it'll do, this is necessary, it'll just run it here. I was going to say, if we were changing the value of the checkbox, it would also run its checkbox changed event, which I do use in here. But at any rate, so basically that'll run our populate list box, set our extension to that, and repopulate with that extension. So anytime you click on a file name, here, it'll update, it'll extract the extension out of it while it's doing the other things it's doing with these boxes up here. It'll extract the extension out of it and put it in here if your auto extent is checked. Auto extension is checked. If it's not, it won't do that, obviously. Now here's our CB auto extension check changed. Okay, so if it's not checked, it'll run this, creates a temp string here equal to, our file extension dot text. Sets it to here, so, and populates it, so again, basically, when you push that button 2, so when you push this, okay, you might have noticed that's why it gets a star in it, okay, but then it populates the list box with that star item, so that just, retrieves every file. But again, that's still a little quirky how that thing works. It would be better to have it work differently, but the point is that's what's going on here. So basically, if you're, you uncheck the box or whatnot, it'll go in and, basically, temporarily go, but it's forget what I said about this button. It does this temporarily. So I'm actually creating, that's why when you uncheck the box, it automatically lists all the files in it, even though the extension doesn't change. It actually does change. It changes it temporarily, and then it runs the populate list box and then changes it back. That's why I create a copy here. But see, I do my checking up in the populate list boxes for that file extension. So that's why I had to do it that way. Just because I run my file extension check routine there. So, but that's why it'll change it just temporarily, but it'll still keep the extension that you originally had in there, so it won't overwrite it. But still, I wanted it to where, if you were in here and you got annoyed with it automatically adding the extensions, or you wanted to switch to a different file type, I wanted you to just be able to click this off and then click it back on, okay, and be able to select a different file name, okay, without having to use this button. I added this later, which this is this button down here, and that just simply puts this in that text box, okay, and then runs the populate list box again. So it leaves it, this temporarily changes it, but changes it back, and and again, it's a little confusing behavior, particularly since it's so hard to put tooltips into your controls these days. I used to use tooltips all the damn time, and it used to be easy in Visual Basic 6 to put tooltips. There was a tooltips property, and you could just put a tooltip in it, and it would just show up when you hovered your mouse over it. It was nice, but now you got to go through and use a tooltip box or what the fuck ever, and I don't know, I still hadn't quite figured that out yet, and it doesn't seem to work right either, like you saw in one of my other videos. So I'm going to have to figure that out one of these days. But But in any event, but that covers what that button does. Now our button preview, okay, which is obviously our preview button. That goes in here, and it first starts by clearing list box 2, which is our right-hand list box, and then you've got our label 10, which is the label at the bottom down here. This is label 10. This is list box 2. But sets our label 10 to its default text. This is what I consider the default text for it. Okay, so the moment you click that, it resets what's in here. And we'll get to this later because this changes. If you click you click on list box 2, you click an item, it displays the full path of the file, but you'll see that later. Then we have some, temporary numbers or temporary variables that we use in the scope of this routine here, this method. This is for auto numbering left and right, and our auto number increments. That's an integer, so that's basically the starting value of it. And we got a try parse to convert our number seed, which is this text box right here, into our auto number. So if you wanted a number other than 1 as your starting number, well, you can put it in there and it tries to parse it. If it can't, it remains 1. So if it does succeed at parsing, so if you had like A in there or something, well, it's not going to work. So but it'll just leave it at 1. So then we do a for I loop going through, basically everything in our list box or item count. So it goes through, our list box 1, so, it's list box 1, even though we're in list box, we're dealing with list box 2 here, but still it's going through everything in list box 1, okay, and going if, if checkbox auto number left dot checked and text prefix dot text, which is this is our text prefix, and this is our text, with this and replace. So just to give you a hint, and this is our text right and text left boxes. So basically this goes in and it's just checking to make sure that that prefix text is not equal to nothing, and to make sure that the auto number left checkbox is checked. And then it's going auto L equals prefix dot text plus the space plus auto number to string, etc. And then it's doing the same for the right checkbox. So this is basically just setting up our auto number string, okay, to work in a certain way. And again, it does this through every iteration of the loop. So but basically if you have an auto number, it's adding the auto number variable we had up here, converting it to a string, and adding it with our prefix. If our prefix box doesn't have anything in it, well then it's just adding an empty string to it. So now you will have 2 spaces in it. That's a drawback, and I could have corrected that, but I had to do more if-then statements or whatever. But it wasn't that big of a deal. So anyway, the point is that we just have these various configurations both for the left and the right checkbox. And we do have an else statement here, and this because it was creating, the left was creating a pad, a space before the number, and I didn't want that even if you weren't using a prefix, so I decided to, that had to add this additional case here just to just to make sure there wasn't a space on the left like there would have been here. Because like I said, it would equal, if our text was empty, well, then we'd have this space here, and then a number, and then another space. Well, if the checkbox, okay, is indeed checked, but the text and the text string is empty or is not empty, it'll run this. If it is empty, the text string can be anything. Here, it'll run this, which simply adds the number and a space, but no space before it. So, because this is again is our auto numbering for the left-hand side of our file name, and the other one's for the right-hand side. So I didn't care as much what goes on with it, even though we'll put some spaces in it too. Again, you can change it in your version if it bugs you that much. Now here I create a temp string, and we use another split function, so I have to split the the file name off of it, and then I create just a regular string, another temp variable to use. So basically temp, is what I use down here. And it is an array, so you can see that I use it here, but I really don't use the file extension. I just use the left-hand side of it, because I use the file extension out of our text file box here, for it. But like I said, I could have kept this and actually used the original array, or the original file extension values, so you could actually rename more than just one file type. But yeah, I could have used the the temp1 key, and then that would give us our file extension. So I may change that one of these days. Because right now, again, when it builds one of those files in that right-hand list box, it'll use whatever extensions in here instead of what's in here. And again, but since I do extract the left-hand side of it, I could have actually used the right-hand side instead of what's in here. So, and again, there could be some advantage to that, and that would be kind of easy to do. But again, for right now, I'm not going to worry about it. Let's see. You just hold on for a minute. Okay, but basically what this does, okay, this is our CB remove.check. So, let's see. Yeah, but basically, this temp file, you can see I just do extract the names directly out of a given index. Okay, so we want a correspondence. We want, we want to make sure that item 1 over here is the same item over here. Item 2 is the same item over here, etc. We don't want to get these scrambled anyway. We want these to have an identical number of entries to make sure the same file is the same place. Because later on, when we go do the commit, when it's moving the file names, it'll take the file name from this box, okay, in this box, and it'll rename whatever's here to the corresponding entry over here. So if these were ever disjointed for some reason, well, it's going to rename the file, the original file, to perhaps the wrong file name. So it's important that is kept in check. So since those are two independent list boxes. But basically, anyway, I put that function in here to where you can remove the file names. I don't remember if I showed you that in the last video or not, but I can discard the original file names just by clicking this if I want to. So so it'll kind of shows you, like, you know, a bunch of everything. But like I said, if I wanted, you know, I could go, you know, let's look for that. Yeah, I've never actually tried it with file named extensions this big before. But you know, anyway, we got you know, all these files in here, you know, with that. But I could go discard original text. Okay, now if I try it like here, it'll give you a error box. But if I put like auto number, okay, you can, you know, auto number it. So you know, that gives you the ability to do that. So you can just completely rename the file instead of, if you want to, instead of just having to edit, start with whatever's here. So you can, you know, and this is, you know, something like this is actually good if you got a bunch of pictures, you know, like 500 pictures, you know, on your computer that you took, and you want to just assign a unique name to them. This is a good way of doing it, because, you know, instead of using the cryptic file name that your camera spits out, you know, it allows you to, you know, rename them all. So the next batch of pictures you bring into your computer, you can put them in the same directory, okay, without there being file name conflicts. So I used to use an older version of this that I wrote in VB6 all the time, you know, for my old files, but it was much cruder than this program. So, but it does give me that same functionality that I had. So anyway, but that shows you what that functionality is about, because I don't think I showed you that in the last video. But you know, anyway, this part deals with that, you know, that whole CB remove checkbox. So again, this is just a version of what's down here, you know, that, and here's where that message box error comes from, by the way. But you know, this you know, this just kind of deals with that that same thing right here, setting our temp to string equal to this, you know, instead of what we have down here. Okay, because all the rest of this deals with whether there's file replacement text. Okay, if there is file replacement text, you know, in other words, if our text here, we had something we wanted to replace with this, okay, then it'll run this routine. If not, if that text box is blank, you know, it'll run this routine. So, you know, we'll just starting with our original file name, you know, which we got up here, and temp 0 from our split function. So that's the left-hand side of it, you know, our file name. So it takes that and then brings our extension name here. And like I said, I could put, you know, use original extension in it. Geez, I feel like adding that function now that I think about it, because that would be so easy. Here, just bear with me a minute. Okay, so anyway, as you can see, you know, I added this checkbox here. So if I, you know, happen to have everything listed over here, you know, it'll work just like before. It renames everything with the extension if I have this unchecked. So if I checked it, you know, then it basically preserves the original the original extension like you see there. So in theory, I think that would even work in this case, because we're using the original extension. So even if I have this dot here, you know, without it, remember, it puts the dot there as a little bug in the program. But, you know, at least with it, you know, it maintains the original extensions, and that probably is a good thing to leave on by default. And I think I'll probably set that on by default, because, you know, that's really a more sensible way of doing it, I think. Where the fuck is the... Oh, here we go. Okay. So I'll just leave that on by default. Okay, now how I did that, you know, was basically I created another variable here, out right here, called file extension, and then I set it here using the ternary operator. So if it's checked, okay, then it uses the string here. If it's not checked, it uses the text file. So it uses our right hand side, our file extension side of the point here. But one of the reasons, one of the reasons I did it this way, because I do know I have seen some file names these days with more than one period in it. So that's why I was inclined to do it this way. But again, most of the files I'm going to work with aren't like that. But still, I was inclined to use that extension box for that reason, just to make double damn sure it keeps the proper extension. Was the theory. But still, I still think there would be flaws in it, even the way I did it. But that's why I was kind of leading towards. That's why I was kind of doing it that way. But really, this is a saner way to do it. But at any rate, it does that, and then basically, instead of using the file name, which you may have noticed, it used that TextBox.text right here, but I just replaced that with this file extension. So, and I could have put this little statement in place of this, but I was like, well, I might as well just do it up here. So anyway, but every pass through this loop, it'll populate it properly that way. So we get, but this is our string builder, it's what brings our, we use that temp2, that temp2 variable we created up here, right here, which is just a straightforward string, and it builds up this string depending upon the condition of these various text boxes, and it builds it up based upon, our auto L, which is what we had up here. God, this IntelliSense gets annoying. Anyway, auto L and auto, fuck you, I wish you could kind of, I'm sure there's some way of toggling that off. It just gets in the way when I'm trying to explain things. It keeps popping up as a distraction, and it doesn't work well with my ADD. At any rate, we build up that auto number, because we have a string for it, and like I said, earlier, this is where we assign that string, is up in this section right here, which I'm going to go ahead and kind of hate these multiple lines. It's a little clearer like this. But, so it builds up a string like this, or like this, if this condition is not true. For the left-hand side, and then for the right-hand side, because again, this has to do with the number padding, like I said earlier. But at any rate, we go build our strings down here, and that's the auto left, auto right property, text left, and text box right property, which is these two boxes here. But because again, this is the version where we exclude, with CB remove, like I was explaining earlier. Now this is the version where we don't exclude the original file name. So here we do have the temp0 variable, which is the left-hand side of that split. But we do a replace, because we're doing a file replace in this case. We'll replace what's here with what's here. And the great thing is that that replace can just work with some of the files and leave the others alone. So which you may have noticed in my previous video. So if there's nothing to replace, it just won't touch it, and it'll run this routine instead, which doesn't use the replace algorithm. So so basically that's what it does. It's pretty simple. You're just building a string, and then at the very end of it, this is where we go set, add the item to our list box 2, which is the string we've been building. So whatever it came out to, it'll add it on this pass of the loop. It increments our auto number, and then it goes our button commit. It enables our commit button. So so if you press the preview button, that's one of the last things we do is make sure that commit button's enabled, and so it's set to true. And I do it in here even though this is in a for loop. In other words, it's enabling that button like umpteen times, but it's just because of the fact that I think I was thinking that I was going to do some error checking in it or some shit, you know. So if it didn't actually run the loop, in other words, if there was nothing in this text box, you know, in other words, there was no list box, you know, if the item count was 0 or whatnot, well, then this loop would never run. So it wouldn't enable the commit button, because again, you don't want to be able to accidentally hit commit when this is blank and this isn't, because I don't know what that would do, but I don't think it would delete all your files, but you know, it's just a safeguard. It's just wanted to make sure it wouldn't happen. So even though it's redundant to do that, like, you know, for however many times it passes through that loop, it's still, you know, better to be safe than sorry. And here's our button commit, you know, click event. So you know, an error thing here, you know, error equal, you know, setting it to 0, and you know, we're going through the list box items.count, and basically we're using a try, and this is what actually does the renaming right here. It's through the file move command. So, you know, we take our, you know, selected path, you know, which we assigned much earlier when we did the file load. You know, when we hit this button, you know, it automatically assigns that variable. Then we add a slash to it. You know, the at, you know, so we can just do it with 1 slash instead of 2. You know, because if you just do it, you know, without that at, I don't know if you know this or not, but if I just did it like that, it would look at this as part of an escape sequence. So, and that's why it's giving me an error down there, as you can see. But with an at, it treats it like an at sign. So, which is what you need for working with directories and shit. So that's why I use the at sign. It makes it so you don't have to put double slashes. You know, because otherwise, if I did it like this, I would have to put a double slash in it. But I just don't like the look of it, especially when we start getting into long file path names. So it's just a personal preference. That's an easy way to fuck up, in my opinion. So I just like to leave it like this. And basically, here's our list box items, you know, for index I, you know, to string from our list box 1, because this is our source file name, and this selected path plus yeah, this is easier to look at. See, I have it like this because I usually have my little box over here open, my control toolbox. But here, this is just easier to read as a single line here. So this is our source, this is our destination, basically. And, you know, this is taking what we did up in our preview button, okay, and basically converting it to a string and concatenating it with our path, and then Bob's your uncle. So we're moving a file of this name to a file of this name, and that's what you use as the move command. It just actually renames it, so there is no rename command that I've been able to find. But anyway, now we have a catch statement. This is one of the few times I actually do say, hey, an error occurred in item I plus total errors, because in theory it'll actually just keep looping through it, but if it had an error, like, you know, somewhere, you know, it would just set the label 10 text, you know, instead of popping up a box 50 million times. I don't want to get 50 million dialog boxes popping up. You know, because you had 50 files you were renaming and it had some kind of error, so it just does it once, but it won't actually do anything, you know, because it's telling you there was an error, so it wasn't able to rename a file. So we're catching it, and I guess I'm just catching it universally here because I didn't actually specify the type of error, you know, which I perhaps should have done, but again, I think just on any error this will catch it and run this block. So I don't think you have to put, like, you know, parentheses, exception type, EX, you know, that kind of thing. I don't think you have to do that. I think it'll just catch it on any error, and you could decipher it down in the error catch block if you wanted to with for next statements. Because again, in Visual Basic 6, I never dealt with that. You know, we had an on-error go-to statement back in those days, and and you'd have a a little line as part of your subroutine that would go to that, and you'd handle any errors and decipher them in that little block at the end of your code, and it worked fine. I mean, there's nothing wrong with it. I mean, this is okay too, I suppose. But anyway, after all that's done, then we run the populate list box again, so you can see the new names show up after you run your commit button, and then we got button commit dot enable dot equals false, so it turns itself back off again, because again, there's nothing in there. The right hand box is blanked, and it's blanked. And remember, in the in the populate list boxes routine, that's the first thing it does is clear the left list box 1 and 2. Now we got list box 2 selected, index changed. Okay, so that's a click event for list box 2. It sets the text 10 property, or label box, label 10 property, which is that label at the bottom here. It's text. It sets its text to the full file path. So it's just a way of previewing what it's going to do as far as a file path is concerned. That's why I put it in there. So I can click on a file and say it's full file path that it's going to write. So it's just a way of kind of back checking it if you're worried about it. And then this sets that parameter I was talking about earlier, that because that goddamn item selected parameter for some reason resets itself to -1 all the fucking time. It was doing that. I couldn't get it to work with my edit box. With this little text edit box here. So I had to create this up here, this list box item selected. I just used the right arrow key to get back to where I left off before I scrolled up the screen, by the way. Because I don't know if you know that, but shit. Damn piece of shit. Now I lost my place for real. Well, son of a bitch. I think that was it. Okay, but I don't know if you know this or not, but my cursor was down there, and you can see it where this blue line is. And here's where we are right here. So, but if you press like an arrow key, for example, since your cursor's on another line, you'll jump back to where you left off. So as long as you don't click on a new place, otherwise you lose your place. Anyway, that's just a convenient way to jump around but still scroll. Another convenient thing to do is just use this split bar, but that can get distracting a little bit without a bigger screen. And you can make your program display better than that. Split works, but otherwise I don't like working a crunched up little display. Let's see. Okay, but basically that's what that does, and then it sets that list box, because right now this is valid, this list box dot selected index. But later on, when you try to come out of your text box, even though the goddamn thing, your list box 2 still looks like something selected, and apparently it isn't. Because it's set to -1 and it starts giving you errors out the ass. So, in any event, later on, that's why I store this value right now, because later on we're going to need it. Because we're going to want to edit this, So, but like I said, you got to select an item first. So this label has to have some kind of text in it. And that makes sure that this actually has a proper value in it too. Okay, check changed. Okay, checkbox 1, check changed. Okay, where's checkbox 1? There. It's not there. Ugh. I don't know where the fuck that is. I'm getting brain dead here. I think this was just the original name of it before I renamed the checkbox or some shit. I don't know, but you know, I think it's a CB remove. You know, which is this is what I think it is. So basically, it's, you know, just enabling or disabling these boxes just to give you some feedback. So if you disregard that, these go gray. So it doesn't delete the text. You know, the clear button will do that if you want to delete it, but it at least just makes it go gray. You know, if you want to discard the original text. So, like I showed you earlier. This is a clear button right here, and that just goes and clears everything. So it sets all these boxes back to their default states. Now let's box 2 double click. Now this is when we go into edit mode. You know, in this code, you know, this is where I was trying to do it with the mouse, like I was saying much earlier in the video. You know, I was trying to do it with the mouse, but it seems to be giving me universal screen coordinates, but it needs to be giving me, you know, the form coordinates, and it doesn't seem to be doing that. So I just decided, well, I can do more research into it and get the right coordinate set, or I could just, you know, forget about it and not mess with it right now. So that's what I did. I was wanting to get this wrapped up. And here I'm testing to make sure that the label text is not equal to its default text, meaning that there's nothing in it. It means you haven't, that would mean that you haven't clicked on that right text box, because every time you click on it, the label 10 changes to a full path, you know, the file that you click on in this right text box there, the text box 2, or the list box 2 rather. So let's just make sure that it's not set to default text, and that, and also that it's not, for some weird reason, set to nothing. So if that's true, then it basically brings our, you know, sets our text box edit to our selected index. And again, this is the only way I could do it, so that global variable, you know, which I populated earlier, you know, so that basically I can, you know, grab the information out of the element you click on, okay, you double click on, and then because apparently double clicking on the stupid thing must reset that value to -1, but then I make the text box visible, and I set it to select all, but that doesn't seem to do anything. I don't know why. So, but the fact of the matter is that that's what it does. Now when you, and this event right here is tied to that text box 2, and it's probably, that's probably beeps on you, you know, is that I got it set to the key press event as opposed to like the key up or key down event. I don't know why it chimes every time I finish editing, but you know, when I press the return key, you know, I don't know, it's probably giving me an error because that's a single line text box. Shit, I don't know. But the fact of the matter is, I don't know why it chimes like that. But the point is that when you press return, basically it's, you know, just looking for, oh shit, I didn't realize that worked. Yeah, because I was wondering if that would work, because I just entered the escape sequence for return, but I'd actually gone out on the internet. I was prepared to, I don't even think I have that up anymore, but I was prepared to actually find, yeah, no, I don't think I have that up anymore, but I found other ways of doing it too. Yeah, because there were like 3 different methods I saw. Damn, that's a shame. I would like to have kept that. But yeah, there's other ways to check it. You know, like you can check it for a character key code directly. and then there was a a special flag that you could put in there as another way of checking for the return key or for various other keys. But anyway, yeah, that sucks. But anyway, yeah, this worked though, just using it as an escape character, for the test for the return key. So, because apparently it works. I mean, that's, but I just forgot all about it, once I saw that it worked because I had other problems with it. Okay, so, basically I'm testing too to make sure that the trim value, is equal to that. Because again, this is where I was trying to look for that, is null or white space, but I couldn't get it to fucking work. So, I know there's a way of doing it, I just forgot what it is. Fucking .NET and IntelliSense, just isn't robust enough to give you the hints that it really needs, that you really need. I mean, it should be a lot more robust than that, and the hints it gives you. Because a lot of these things, hell, you don't even know if they're supposed to be arrays or whatever, like, like the items, listbox.items, I would never have known that this was supposed to be an array if I wouldn't have saw that items is actually an array, if it weren't for me seeing code on the internet, to that effect. So, because it doesn't give you any feedback when you type just, it's like, like items, for example, okay, this is what it tells you, but it doesn't tell you it's a fucking array. It's the items of the list box. Okay, there's no indication that that's an array, but in fact it is. So there should be, and there should be other indications for other things too, like when it's, like when you're, it's wanting a point object or something like that. It should be better at telling you that than it is. It just should give you more hints. This would be so much fucking easier to use, this .NET shit, if there were better hints than those little fucking, than IntelliSense. Again, it's the makings of a good idea, IntelliSense, and like I said, without BB6s and BB5s in IntelliSense, I've never gotten into programming, honestly. Not a modern computer, so it'd been too big of a pain in the ass with all these thousands of functions and different, fucking, flags and all that shit. I mean, without IntelliSense, man, I wouldn't even think about doing programming like it's a regular old text editor. But at any rate, it could be improved is what I'm trying to say. It's just still annoying. Okay, but at any rate, but that basically sets the text, and so when you're done editing, it sets that, that listbox2 item right back to the original text. I was really surprised this worked. I was expecting to have a big battle with it, but trying to figure out the right way to edit a listbox item, but no, it was as simple as this. So, but at any rate, that pretty much covers the whole fucking program in a fucking hour and a half or whatever this damn video took. So, anyway, but it's a useful little program, so, I've been wanting something like this for quite a while, and I thought, because I always knew I could write my own, because I did, a while back. I just never wanted to get around to it. I know there's probably something out on the internet that could have gotten something similar done, but I'd rather have a program like this written myself so I could change it for the specific situations that I may need, because it's still unlikely I'm going to find a program out on the internet that does exactly what I want. So anyway, it's worthwhile to have a routine like this.